Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Let the record show it is 5:45 p.m. and 6 of the 7 board members are present this evening. Rachel Deppo will be absent. At this time, our first item is to go ahead and approve the meeting agenda. Does everyone have a chance to review the agenda? Any questions or additions, corrections needed?
Oh, I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
All right, motion is by Lisa Seguin, seconded by Jenny. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. We have an approved meeting agenda. So first thing, we'll move into work session. And I believe the first item on the work session is a discussion around board member communication process.
Yeah, and this was originally broached by the chair. Chair Deppa's not here this evening. I think that we discussed this in retreat and just how to respond to our community, what's the appropriate way. Kind of came to consensus, but I think that from other board members there was a little bit of recalibrating and, well, maybe we should do this a little bit differently and balanced approach. So we agreed to put it on the work session for just further discussion. And I'm not quite sure where the discrepancy is or the discussion is at a different level, and maybe I just let the board kind of talk that through a little bit, but we afforded some time before we move forward. And I think this is predominantly, I may be wrong, is how to respond to an email when it comes to an individual board member or a smaller group of a board member, and how do you respond, and because you want to make sure you do respond, but to what extent. We had quite a bit of discussion about that at the retreat, and I think that there was an agreement from the officers just to give some time for the board to have further clarification discussions on the matter.
Sure. So was there a specific area that we wanted to dive a little deeper on, or not sure exactly who? Rachel didn't, she didn't think I needed to get any extra detail, anticipating her not being here. So, I don't know.
I think it's probably just coming to conclusion, what do we want to do?
Okay.
So if we're all on an email, my assumption is that the board chair then responds. If it's sent to us individually, that we can respond. But it sounded like we probably should copy Matt and Rachel. So I think we just need to kind of define that protocol and say, here's what we're doing. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
That's what I remember too.
And it was acceptable to just respond by saying thank you for your email, and we will reply soon. And then from there, pass it to Matt and Rachel for
The official response.
the official responses.
Yeah. I also like that we all, at least of the last, I think, 2 that have come in that all of us have been copied on. I think it was nice for us to have that moment to share our thoughts with Rachel, so that she was calibrating to make sure that that was in fact a collective voice. So I think that feels right. So I'd like to see her continue that practice. You agree or disagree?
Sure.
Okay. All right,
And I
so.
know, she had asked everyone, is it okay if I send this out to such and such activity, right, for doing a great job? And I said, if you sign it from the board, then you copy the board.
Right.
And she felt that was, I don't know if that's what you guys agree with as well, but instead of her asking every time, can I send this email out? Yes, of course, go ahead. But copy all of us on it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yep. Okay, so to conclude, I think we're saying if all 7 members of the board are copied on it, we can, as an individual board, reply to the sender expressing our gratitude for receiving the feedback, because I think that was all important to all of us individually, but then also just reiterate that the response is going to be coming, the official response will come from either the superintendent based on whatever the concern was, or the board chair. And then if individually I receive an email, I'm allowed to respond back to that individual, but copying Matt and the board chair.
And then what about the in-between is my question. What if it's you plus someone, but not all?
Same as if it's yourself.
Same as if it's yourself? It's
Yeah.
only if it's all.
I think the one concern we had was we don't know if all of us are
Correct.
getting individual emails. I think that was one of the pieces that we've said loop in Rachel and Matt,
Yeah.
because it's potential that there could be a collective response rather than all
Sometimes
individual.
people send everyone the exact same email is what we're getting at, or something.
100%. So I just wanted, like, so any email that I send, I loop in Rachel and Matt. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yeah. I might, in that instance, I might just ask Rachel, has anybody else received this email? Right?
Yeah.
Depending on, like, we can't solve for every variable, but I
Right.
think this just feels like a good step forward regardless. So I think that'll be a good modicum of change.
Perfect.
Okay. Any other things looming, or does this just feel like a good conclusion? All right. We'll move into the next topic, which was our student school board rep selection process. Again, this is one we've talked about conceptually, and I think we wanted to regroup and just make sure everybody felt comfortable.
Yeah, I think I've had a chance to talk to both the student school board reps, and I think they have some good input on the matter. If you recall, back on February 3rd in my Thursday email, I just encapsulated the conversation, and it was this idea of that, and I put it in, I think, 3 major bullets, with the last 2 still, or the second bullet, excuse me, would be still to be decided, but I think some student school board rep feedback might help guide that conversation. But we would facilitate the same process in order to achieve the goal to get it down to 3 to 5 finalists. So we don't need to have a set number, because it kind of depends on who comes forward, and it could be solid 5, it could be solid 3, or anything in between. And then we would do the same process. They would apply, they would write their little reasons why they want to be a school board rep, answer the questions, do the interviews, and then the job of that subcommittee, which is usually made up of 2 or 3 school board members, high school counselors, administration, the incoming senior school board representative, myself. And then the task would change to not just to decide who it would be, but also then just to decide the finalists. And then the finalists, we would move that into the concept of an election. And then I think, Lila, you had the idea of, because I asked both John and Lila about, it was discussed at that meeting, do we do district-wide election? Do we do school-wide election? Do we do a specific grade-wide election? And I think Lila came up with a pretty good idea of the election, what they thought, and I'll let them kind of share your thoughts on it.
Okay. Well, so we thought that probably sophomore and juniors would vote, just because freshmen a lot of the time don't really know a lot of the upperclassmen super well, and seniors are on their way out, so a lot of times they're very focused on college and just getting out of there. So we thought that would maybe be our voting area. And then we also had the idea of our finalists, since it's obviously going to be an election sort of style, kind of running their own campaign, and obviously we'd have to kind of decide how that would work, but that way they put effort into it, they really obviously care, they can show people what they want to represent, how they're going to contribute to the students. So that was kind of our basis.
And some other things that we kind of talked about was maybe having it where maybe like you mentioned, maybe having people meet in the PAC and giving like kind of on the application you write the few reasons why you want to be a school board member. Maybe that's your speech to give to the fellow students in front of some of those people who are going to vote. So kind of more of an election process versus just
Yeah,
apply for it.
I love that idea. Otherwise, how else would they vote, right? How would you decide,
Yeah.
right? You have to have something to go off of.
Make
so.
the title a little bit more public than it is right now, because I don't think a whole lot of kids in the high school realize that we are a thing.
Sure.
So
Oh, I love that.
And I agree with it too, other than, I feel seniors, yes, they don't need to be on it, but freshmen, yeah, they don't know you, but they could learn to know you during this election process and this debate or whatever you
I think what Lila said too this afternoon is, if you're, these are sophomores going to be juniors, so it's
Correct.
done this spring. So if you did the grade level below and the grade level up front, you still might, some freshmen do know sophomores, and obviously juniors know sophomores as well. So you could do potentially a 9th, 10th, and 11th grade current
Yeah,
and facilitate that.
that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
agree.
We bring them in. We did talk about it wouldn't necessarily be an idea to facilitate a debate. We wanted to stay away from a debate, and they wanted to just make sure, I think it was a really good perspective, is get this to be more public in front of students and have some true people have to commit to it now that it is, you're going to have to stand up in front of potentially close to 600 students and give your reasons why you're running, and potentially we'd have some prepared questions to ask, kind of like what you do as a forum for school boards and city councils and county commissioners. So we emulated it to be a little bit more similar to that. And if that's the direction, we can work on that together and go from there.
I love it.
I like it.
Yep,
Great ideas.
Good.
all right. Very good.
So is this a policy that we will vote on maybe like next meeting, or you'll have a first read or something for us? Or?
Yeah, I'll see what we need to do in the policy and draft a piece to take a first look at it next month.
I looked at it, I mean, it would be changing just a couple of very small things to represent what Lila was talking about.
Yep.
Pretty easy.
Pretty straightforward, and we can do a 2-read March, April, because we do this process usually in May.
Matt, I know you said you're going to let the numbers dictate, but would you anticipating putting more than 5 students up on a ballot? Like, that seems like a lot.
That's what I just encapsulated the conversation that you guys had.
Yeah.
I would think I don't know that we need to define whether it's 3 or 5, but we might want to say no more than 5.
Correct. I would agree. 5 feels like a lot.
Yeah.
How do you, if you get, I guess then, I agree completely with 5 or less, but how do you rationalize it down to 5 if you get 10? We would need to outline
Kind of
that,
what we
That's
do
what we
now
just-
for the interview.
just to have interviews.
Yep, right?
Yeah, I think that's what we outlined, is that we take the whole pool, right, and then rationalize it down to whatever the number is that's going to be on the election.
Yeah.
And what's a typical year? How many people apply?
A dozen?
Okay.
I think that's what it was last year. We might have had 12 or 15 or something last year. But
Yeah, but I don't think we've ever interviewed more than 5.
We might have done 6. No, very rarely have we been more than 6 or 7. I
Yeah.
think
So-
first few years there might have been more.
Okay.
But yeah, we can,
All right.
or not we, whoever the group is, right? It's a different group every year, but we can rationalize it down.
All right. Great. Good work. Item 3, just a discussion around the full IDEA funding resolution that's going to be coming up.
Yep, I'm going to read the resolution just for the public to understand the difficulty this is and why we're raising awareness with our congressional team that represents Minnesota. So this is a resolution that the School Boards Association would like to have each individual school board not only approve the resolution, but to share it with the representatives in Congress in Washington, D.C. And it states, whereas the Delano School District recognizes the need for a strong investment in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. And whereas the Individuals with the Disability Education Act was first enacted in 1975 to help ensure that all students with disabilities will have access to a free, appropriate public education, and IDEA's enactment more than 45 years ago, the current federal investment in IDEA is less than 14%. And whereas, with the enactment of IDEA, the United States Congress committed to fund up to 40% of the additional costs of special education, thereby promising to provide up to 40% of the national average per pupil expenditure, which is currently estimated at $13,828 by the United States Department of Education. And whereas our nation's school districts face an increased demand for greater resources to fulfill the needs of students under IDEA, including those for students affected by multiple disabilities, whose individual education plans require more resources. And whereas with each increase in IDEA child count, the Delano School Board and others throughout the country continue to adjust their budgets to accommodate this increased need and ensure that each child educated through IDEA receives the appropriate supports, with some school districts dedicating 40% or more of their general education budgets to special education services. And whereas Delano School District has between a $1.3 and a $1.4 million cross subsidy for fiscal year 20, which is one of the part of the statewide cross subsidies that has more than $673 million in fiscal year 2020, and is expected to grow to $806 million by fiscal year 25. I used to explain this at the beginning, the first probably 4 or 5 years of my superintendency. The easiest way to explain this in Delano is we have a current operating levy that supports and is about $1 million of revenue to help continue to operate and provide the programs and services. All of that money goes towards special education cross subsidy. Now, I think in the last 2 years, that has grown by almost $300,000 to $400,000 just for Delano Public Schools. So now it's exceeded the revenue that we even get from our levy over that amount, and it's creating a major hardship for school districts in the state and in the country because the federal government has not funded that IDEA and the requirements and the mandates that we have to provide that free and appropriate education to all of our students. Be it resolved that Delano School Board supports the IDEA Full Funding Act that will help strengthen the federal investment in special education by authorizing a 10-year plan to fully fund the federal share of IDEA. And then being it resolved that Delano School Board urges Congress strong bipartisan support for and passage of IDEA Full Funding Act. And now therefore be it resolved that the Delano School Board remains committed to providing students with disabilities and their families the support they need. And that's the resolution that I wanted to bring up during work session. And then I would ask if there's any other discussion or comments, I would ask that the board approve the resolution at the March school board meeting.
Okay. That was going to be my question. Is that enough time? I know we approved it in Mtss last week.
I think we're okay on time. I mean, the key piece is to communicate it to our congressional representation.
Okay. Yeah, we talked about it in Mtss, and I thought Delano's, I thought our number was like 1.4 million.
Yeah, it's if you go by FY20, it's somewhere between 1.3 and 1.4.
Yeah, it's a big gap.
Yeah, and I think the point is that public education is committed to provide all services under IDEA. We're totally committed to it. It's a unique in the world that an educational system supports special education the way we do with students with disabilities. But the appropriate funding's got to be there. Mm-hmm. And we've just not been able to, districts like our size just cannot support, again, that amount of cross subsidy, moving that dollars over to support those kids that need the support, but the funding just isn't there. So.
Great. Any questions for Matt? All right, we'll look forward to that in March. We'll move into the next item on the work session, which is policy updates. So there's several tonight.
Yeah, actually, we just have two. I think we have on the agenda 3 that just require one read, and there are 2 that I would just like to cover that will require 2 reads, one tonight and one next month. One is pretty straightforward. It's under policy 202, school board officers, and really I believe the only change really is on page 2 to my understanding, and that's the clerk. We just had to rename the clerk's responsibilities under Article 4, Section C. The board elected clerk oversees the functions as performed by the district's business manager and superintendent school board assistant. So it's both Paul and Mary as well. So we had to clarify that. And I believe the rest is all pretty much non-substantive changes, just some grammatical corrections. That would be it.
Okay. Any questions?
Just barely enough to add it to be substantive.
Yeah. Any questions for Matt on policies? All right.
The second policy is a much, much bigger, beefier policy, and it gets reviewed quite extensively just with change in statutes, change in law, case law that requires that. But this is about public and private personnel data. And there's just some major changes in the definitions. So what does private mean? There's been some language there that's been removed and some new language added just based on the latest of whether there was legislative changes on dealing with private and public personnel data in public entities. The second page, again, continues some updates on definitions. For example, what is personal data and what is protected health information. And so you see some references there to some to some statutes and some other pieces there. The next level of changes goes to page 6. And that kind of talks about private personal data and kind of gives guidance on what can be disseminated and who has rights to private personal data. Somebody that's in a position of authority or as a supervisor, someone like this, so on and so forth. This is obviously creating evaluations of personal data. Page 7 talks about that the school board, or the school district, excuse me, must, if requested by governing boards that govern the license, like Pellsby governs the license of teachers, the Board of School Administrators governs the license of administrators. It talks about the procedure if there's a complaint or they request information, that gets is released to those governing agencies. The next page continues some more information about what data is released under this paragraph that doesn't include student data. So if there's feedback information, things like that. The next page on page 9 gives guidance again on what is public and private and who has access to that information. And that's about it. I did it in summary fashion. The last part of it is in Article 8, responsible authority, and it states that the responsible authority or a school district employee, if so designated, shall serve as the school district's data practices compliance official, and as such shall be the employee to whom persons may direct questions or concerns regarding problems in obtaining access to data other than other data practice problems. And I believe it lists myself as the person to call, and we get we get requests for data, all kinds of information and data, and we have guidance not only just in personnel information, but we have guidance of other educational data. Sometimes the request will go to Mary as a business manager, and we usually collaborate on what gets released. There is also connected to this policy in addendum the procedures for carrying out HIPAA regulations, because obviously we're talking about a lot of things that go back and forth with regards to medical data on personnel, and then also a consent to release data and a request from an individual, and that is also attached to the policy. So this is a pretty beefy policy. It probably gets reviewed legally almost annually, but it's pretty routine to have this policy be reviewed and revised regularly, because the laws change. What is personal, what is private, what's the definitions, who has access, all of that comes into play. So
That was my question, is I couldn't remember, has it always been the superintendent? I always thought the person was actually the business manager.
it depends, because it'll come to me too. They'll make requests to me as well.
Okay.
Do the two of you back each other up in case?
It depends on the request. There's for example, there's requests of procurement and financial purchases and pricing data and information like that. I'll defer to Mary, and it's pretty routine on what you do. Sometimes there's an attorney that will request data based on that they're on a case or whatever the case. There might be investigative agencies. Wright County Sheriff's Office. We've had a request from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, not unemployed, but we've had those types of requests, and usually, a lot of times they'll hit the building first. It always gets deferred to me.
Okay.
And if it's real complicated, I seek legal opinion on what we can and cannot release.
Okay.
So it isn't frequent enough that you'd need backup on either side noted in the policy?
I don't think so. It's not that, especially on personnel data, it's not frequent at all.
Okay.
But I mean, a perfect example is you get an employee's looking for a loan, they want dates of employment, which is a very straightforward public data request.
What happens if you weren't available?
Yeah.
Then it'll defer to Mary.
Okay, so like we're covered in the policy, like if you are not available for an extended period of time, then it just kind of goes.
For some reason, they seem to always call this thing though,
Okay,
wherever I am.
okay.
But there is, Mary would be the deferred on all of that.
If you go on that SpaceX flight, we would be able to get you. Or maybe we would, I don't know. Have good Wi-Fi on that flight?
For the record, I have no intention of going to space.
Never say never.
I'm afraid of a 6-foot high ladder.
Oh, okay,
So-
then probably not.
Probably not going to be in my near bucket
All right.
list. So those are the two policies that are on the agenda that require 2 reads. And then I believe there are 3, Paul, that are just one read, non-substantive changes. And they should be linked to the agenda, and they were in the Thursday email as well.
Yep. Great. All right, are we ready to move to item 5?
Yep.
All right, so ice hockey park concept update.
Yeah, just to let you know, and I didn't allot a lot of time here, and we do have time to talk further if the board, so feels so much. But we're going to pull the Building and Grounds Committee together tomorrow evening. I know we've got some scheduling logistics with 2 members of that committee. I've asked Jim to reach out to board members. He's got a Wright Tech Center meeting tomorrow evening, if somebody could help cover that, because Jim would be the closest outside of the Building and Ground Committee because he serves on DASA. And so he's kind of in the know. And what we would like to do is actually look at this concept from the school's perspective, get an update from Phil Kern, the city administrator, because this was discussed at the February 22nd City Council workshop. And Phil and I have been meeting with Brian Roars, who's kind of heading up this proposed ice park concept for the past, good year, I would say. And it's getting to the point now where it's starting to get some more legs. Funding, I've lived through probably 4 generations of a second sheet of ice that DASA and DEA have tried to come up with, each generation of parents that come through, and all with good intentions, but the biggest stumbling block has always been finances. And this is the first time where I've seen probably the answer to the finances are much more solid with what DASA and DEA have as resources and what the city has. So the concept basically is this would be the portion of land, and again, the land could be described in a couple of different ways, but basically the portion behind the arena and to the side of the arena where the current outdoor park is, the outdoor ice skating rink, all the way back to the soccer concession stand, or the soccer and lacrosse concession stand, and a little bit down by the path, to create an actual city park on our campus. And so the city would take over the land, and then they would manage it, they would finance this. This would be at no cost, with the exception of the land that hasn't served any other purpose besides the hockey arena that it currently sits on, to expand that out to create an ice park. And it would be a city park that would meet the needs of additional ice for hockey teams, both youth and high school, but also it's recreational skate. It's an opportunity to get people to access that part as a park. But it literally, the concept would be that land within the center of the school district campus becomes city-owned park. It has gone through the Park and Recs board. They met twice, and the board has committed to support it to move forward. The city council and workshop thought it was, gave Phil permission to continue to move forward with the concept. They haven't digested all of the funding pieces that would go along with it, but the city would be coming up with dollars to create the park itself. The big piece that I see is the school board needs to be comfortable with the idea of deeding land over. That's the big decision. That's kind of a go, no go to move forward, because if the school board and it's not, we don't believe, and I know we realize you need more information, and I've been trying to incrementally get that information to you, but that's the big decision. Once that decision has been made, it doesn't finish the conversation, because now we're talking about, most people in Delano don't realize that Tiger Drive from Elm all the way up to the top of the hill to the water treatment plant, that is a private district road. It's not, Tiger Drive is not public there. So now if we have access to this park, that would have to become a city street. And the street, or the lack thereof now, is the driveway that goes between the ice arena, alongside the ice arena, to the back parking lot by the elementary school. That would need to become a city street as well. Because now we're saying public can come access the park anytime. You know, we have people access our campus on various different times as well, but the wear and tear on that would not be something that the district could potentially support. There's a lot more of a maintenance understanding there. The other piece that goes along with that is that we have now if you know right now currently the arena sits on leased land from the district. So this started way back in the late 80s, early 90s when they built the arena. We leased the land to them for that purpose, and then we re-up the lease every 20 years. We also leased the land to the city for the outdoor rink that's right next to the arena. So there's a separate lease agreement there. There's a third lease agreement, which is the spot where the second sheet of ice would be in that gravel type makeshift parking lot between the arena and the soccer field, the lacrosse field across the way, is actually, we have a lease agreement with DEHA. So there's 3 lease agreements that exist in that area. There might be a proposal to just deed the whole piece to the city and make it just real clean. The problem is that we have a district-owned locker room right in the middle. It's kind of like Vatican City surrounded by Rome. So we'll have to figure out how we do that. Needless to say, if this gets more legs, and we potentially could come into a memorandum of agreement to really seriously research this, I would definitely involve district attorneys, so will the city involve those attorneys to come up with what makes sense. Our district attorney, Jay Squires, has written all 3 lease agreements that we have with the 3 entities of the city, DASA and DEHA. So that's where we're at. Those are some, you know, there's still a lot of information that needs to come to fruition, but eventually what needs to happen here is that the district will need to commit to the land, and then the city needs to be able to commit financially along with DEHA and DASA, and then they manage it. It becomes a city park. We just got to figure out conceptually what that looks like. And Phil and I and members of the project that are representing this project are going to meet now every other week, or 2 Tuesdays a month, just to keep apprised, keep things going. But this is it's like peeling back an onion. What if this, what if this? And we just got to make sure all answers or questions are answered. But the key piece is your role is you're going to have to make a decision eventually when there's enough information to commit to the land. That's your biggest decision. The city has a lot more management stuff to take care of, whether it's finances, how they do that, and how it gets managed, the whole park gets managed. That will have nothing to do with the district. And one main thing is it will have no financial obligation to the district other than that land that's been used for an ice arena and an outdoor ice rink since, I don't know.
Do we get money now for the land that we lease?
No.
No.
So we don't get any money for it?
No.
I just, you know, my biggest pause is that it is currently on school property. Regardless of what we do, the perception is that the school is going to be doing all of this stuff, right? And I think it's horrible timing. if we are trying to do a referendum, regardless of who's paying for it, those of us that live in Delano, pay the taxes, whatever, it's still one bucket of money. And I just think that our responsibility to our school is to put all of our efforts into getting our referendum passed. And that's my biggest holdup with this, along with all of the other stuff, drinking on school ground or near school grounds, having, that type of stuff happening. I think there's a lot to answer there, but I think it's poor timing.
I do have the answer to the alcohol. That's off the table.
Okay.
That will not exist. DASA and DEHA have said, nope, there will not be any, fundraisings and having alcohol at a fundraising event in the city park. There's city ordinance that speak to this, that you can't have alcohol within 300 feet of a school. Well, they're within 300 feet of a school. But they have agreed that that's off the table. So that's the ship is sailed.
I'm happy to hear about the road, because that was a huge concern of mine, was the wear and tear, and that we would be on the hook to maintain that road. But I still have the same concern about the ancillary parking lots, because they will get used.
Definitely.
At a higher rate. And so that would be some concern of mine, to say, like, what is the agreement going to be, that there would have to be some shared maintenance of effort to keep those parking lots maintained, because we're never going to be able to say it's solely school or solely hockey. And then I guess, in light of what you said about the locker rooms being smack in the middle, would they consider buying those locker rooms from us, purchasing that building?
Yeah, and I think those are the questions that still have to be answered. They did a parking study from the point of, will there be enough parking if there's elementary school conferences and there happens to be a boys and girls varsity hockey game going on? And the answer to that question is, we believe that there is enough parking. You got to remember, we extensively increased the parking at the intermediate school with a large amount of parking. So the capacity issue is probably answered. The maintenance agreement is an issue.
We don't charge DEHA or DASA when
No.
we have to surface those lots.
We don't. So that would have to be some kind of a potential maintenance agreement. Again,
Yep.
this is peeling back. It's
Yeah.
going to take a little bit of work to do this. I totally understand the concept of timing. Without rendering an opinion myself, I think that there can be some clear messaging that this, again, is not funded by the school district. It is not a school district project in any way, shape, or form. But again, you can only control your message and what you say. You don't control on how the public will perceive it.
100%.
To my understanding, the city, you talk about us being property taxpayers in the community, the city wrestles with the idea that our school district community just isn't Delano. So the city perspective looks at, well, these people come in here to the city to utilize the school district because it's their school district, but they don't pay the property taxes. And so there's always a little bit of a balanced thought about one pot. But I believe, and again, more of this will come forward from the city when they get a little bit more serious about this, if this comes to fruition, that the funding sources are not going to be an additional property tax levy. That's not how the city's funding this, to my understanding from the preliminary information that's been shared with me. So I think we're all very heightened. I think the city has been a great partner in understanding that, look, we understand the school district's going out with a levy. They're not doing major projects that would impact the property owner, because we want to have that balanced approach of trying to maintain taxes to a reasonable level. I think that's all going to be discussed, but I don't have any objection to that concern of timing. I think it's very valid. I think, the board has been very clear that that levy is the priority number one for obvious reasons for our financial future. But I can't answer the question of whether that can be achieved and this can be achieved as well.
And snow removal.
I do have a concept that they gave us to pass it around to you guys to look at. They're putting a lot of effort into it, and from what I'm told, this is going on for 20 years now, so. And yes, I understand that we're also trying to pass a levy, but I don't want to be the one that gets in the way of them finally achieving what they want to achieve.
And I totally get that, but if it's been going on for 20 years, you know, I just feel like we have our priority, right, as a school board. And if we do think that there's any risk of it hurting because of perception and we can't reach everybody, why this year? You know, when it's been going on for 20 years, why this year? So it gives me pause because I want that money for our schools. You know, I want to keep all of our teachers, I want to keep all of our staff, and to put anything that could take anything away from that, I just feel is irresponsible, in my opinion.
Right. To play the devil is, so if they don't put the ice up and we also don't pass the levy, so there's no promise we're going to pass a levy this year.
100% agree with that too. I would just, I just don't want anything right now that kind of goes against that goal. You know, we all kind of agreed that that's a huge goal of ours right now.
Right.
You know, and just to have anything out there, because it's going to be really hard to tell everybody unless we put a big sign out on the front, we are not paying for this.
Right.
It's going to be hard to get that across, you know, for 80% of the people that drive by it every day. Like,
Right.
What the heck is going on? So it's just the one thing that I keep thinking about, knowing how much we need, that to go through.
Keep going.
I was going to say they would know that this is a bond, not a levy. Bonds are for buildings. This is a building,
Right. Maybe.
right? And we're not asking for a bond. We're asking for an operating levy.
Yep.
I mean, we can't even get that message across. So.
That's what I'm saying. Tough messages.
The city's also, part of the concept that they had on up in front of the city council was whether the city would ask the Delano citizens for a referendum to pay for it.
Oh, I didn't hear that part.
So that would be an absolute ideal timing.
And the answer's no on that, right?
They haven't decided.
It's my understanding that there's some
Have
sort of
they?
funding available, but I mean, I'm generally supportive. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
redirect or make a different suggestion, but early on there was concept of up there or down here. What conclusion did they come to? Are they trying to build like a hockey or skating complex similar to like a softball field or baseball field where you have 4 parks, kind of like we have down there? What's the idea?
So I think that the move to, because originally conceptually they were looking at alternative locations within the city. Central Park was one location. But when it came down to the hockey aspect of it and the efficiency of using maintenance vehicles, like one Zamboni that can do the outdoor rink and do the ice rink, or the original rink. The efficiency of use and efficiency of just managing and operating the ice park moved the discussion to more of the school site.
Gotcha.
You could have 2 games going on. You don't have one game there and one game here. That might be something that speaks to it.
The infrastructure equipment is ridiculously expensive, like
Yep.
hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yeah, no,
for the
I
Zambonis
get
and
it.
stuff.
But by the same token, it was very clear from the park and rec level, and even from the city's perspective, that this is not an ice hockey park. This is an ice park concept because it has to be. City is very clear that that park needs to be utilized by every one of its citizens to be able to access that public park like they access Central Park. They can go on there, for recreational type. So that's why the concept involves another like outdoor rink that would be like a skate around, and you bring your little ones, teach them how to skate, all of those types of things. It's not just for hockey, although that is the impetus of why. And there are more youth teams. We have now a girls hockey team. That was co-opted with Buffalo a few years back. And now there's just more strain for the ice, for the need to have more teams participate. And if anybody's a hockey parent, when their kids were growing up, you had them on the ice at 9 o'clock in the morning and you had them on the ice at 5 o'clock in the morning. This helps alleviate a little bit of that. But that's a long-winded answer to your question. It's the efficiency of the maintenance of the ice.
Okay, good. And, you know, we've seen neighboring communities try to pull this off through the hockey club, and it's just too much of a financial burden to pull off. We've seen some of them go bankrupt. We've seen some of them need to be bailed out. So for us to solve the 20, 25-year problem that we've had, because the city's willing to kick in a lot of it, and the club, the rest of it, and us, none of it, I mean, that kind of seems like something we need to take advantage of. I mean, we've never had that offer from the city, and now they're coming in with a pretty big piece of it, so.
And the concept isn't necessarily foreign. There are many districts that partner with cities that abut up to each other. They have city property. City Park is right next to a school building. I mean, those concepts are there. I'm not aware of one where it's completely surrounded, but I know that there are major use of city property. We play our baseball games on city fields. The city uses our district fields for certain things. So there's always been a pretty good partnership. But I think that going back to the three major points is the road, the deeding of the land, the understanding of the timing, and to be able to meet that threshold if you go forward, that it does not impede in any way, shape, or form the priority of the district, which is the operating levy. More to come. So that's why I decided to pull the Building and Grounds Committee together to take a deeper dive, to actually potentially walk that site to get an actual visual or look at it on a Google Earth layout, just an understanding of what this would mean, and then just start rattling off the answers to questions, or they need to do more work to answer questions moving forward.
And I guess that would be my ask. Unfortunately, I can't be there tomorrow. Is that, first of all, I think it's like, I would love to take my kids out there and skate. Like, that all sounds fabulous. I just think, like I said, I think the timing is off. And so how do we get at that question? Like, how do we answer that question, and how do we know that, you know, we are still focused on our main priority of passing that levy versus, you know, pausing and letting them do it next year? You know, because of all the funding goes away because it's next year, then I have questions about that too, right? Like, why is it only available this year? That doesn't make sense. And so that's, you know, I would love to understand how we're going to get that answered. And be able to feel really comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I think the motivation from the hockey community is we're at a busting point. We can't survive on one sheet of ice, indoor refrigerated ice. Right.
I totally get it.
You know.
And I hear that all the time. I have lots of friends whose kids play hockey, and it sounds like it's a mess, right? It's hard, and I want that for our kids, but I also want to think about our kids in totality, and if it impacts that, then it's impacting a whole lot more kids than just waiting another year.
What is their timing on this? I mean, when do you anticipate decisions need to be made? I'm just trying to figure out what timing with the referendum,
So,
if there's...
They meaning DEHA and DASA, want to move forward because steel is a year out. So for the structure, for the roof over the refrigerated rink, they're a year out. So it's, they would...
It's not going to be built this fall anyway. Right?
So,
Well,
Yeah, so
they-
nobody's going to see construction
you could have an outdoor refrigerated rink
without a roof.
out there without the structure, the roof on top of it. I think it's in the conceptual drawings. They would absolutely love that this governing body work sessions it next month with a potential decision in April. Is what they're looking for. Now again, the city hasn't fully committed in. There's a few more questions that need to be answered. But I just wanted, again, have this dialogue with you as a board to state that this is going to come forward, and I want to make sure that they're all all questions that we know of get answered to your satisfaction, because your decision is really the commitment of the land. That's the big call. The rest of it, we could work through it. I'm all in favor of putting a huge billboard sign, city project.
Maybe we could recruit some hockey parents to do some phone calling for us.
There you go. Fine. However,
We could turn it into a potential win-win that way.
I'm not joking, actually. It's
No,
going to
I
be
didn't
all
think you
hands
were. I
on
didn't
deck
think you
either
were,
way,
yeah.
right? But
So with this concept, the parking lot beside the elementary school, the paved one, is still school property?
Correct. Unless they, again, that goes back to the legal description of what exactly would they want deeded over. But
So where would the people that are accessing the other turf field that's utilized for multiple sporting activities, where do those families park?
well, and again, usually the people that access the turf fields, the softball fourplex, is not during hockey time period. It's not during the winter. So you're
So
not
they
going.
could park in that lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and they do now. The only thing is, again, it's for conveniency. They will not have access to the gravel parking lot when there's a big softball tournament going on, because there's obviously going to be
a rink
a
there.
structure there with limited to no parking.
we talked about that before too, right? But that's not because it's needed, it's because it's close, which is why they
It's
use it.
wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a need.
Right.
There's plenty of parking to support. You just got to walk 100 feet, 200 feet longer.
I mean, people were parking there when it was grass.
Exactly.
Still do. So,
And when it was mud and water.
Right.
very true.
Nasty.
Yep.
Well, lots of big decisions.
Yeah, and I'll keep you apprised, and especially Jenny and Corey, who serve on that B&G committee. If there's anything else that I learn, I'd love to have one more board member to join Lisa. If Jim could do that, that'd be awesome. But I'll take good notes and share on. And I have shared with all of you the 2 other documents too, the parking study, the feasibility presentation that was there as well. So
Did you find somebody to cover for you?
I have not yet.
It's tomorrow at 6:30?
Tomorrow at 6:30 in Buffalo.
I can do it.
Okay, awesome.
thank you, Amy.
We have a big vote I'll tell you about later then.
Oh, I got homework?
Yeah, no, you just say yes. You'll vote aye.
No problem. All right, thank you. Good conversation. Our next item, committee update, student school board rep reports. Are you doing one tonight or waiting for the 7 o'clock
We
hour?
could talk for just a bit.
Okay.
So we did a little bit of a shorter meeting with the intermediate and elementary buildings. Like we said, we had our little meeting with Mr. Shane, that was today. Kind of just talked about such and such for future student representatives. And on the topic, I brought up, I've started a Google Drive folder with, I'm going to put a bunch of like access to documents and notes and random anything and everything a student representative could use in the future. I'm going to be creating that, and then I'm going to be sharing that with Lila. And for the next few months, we're going to work on that and make it something that can be passed along in the future, so that a few years down the road, a student representative will have access to whatever they need, such as protocols on, like, if there's a student who needs help with something at a school level, how to talk to a principal or something like that, and anything and everything that they need like that.
Cool.
That's great.
You know, it was one of those residuals, and John brought it to my mind again this afternoon, of all the things, you know, John served in this capacity in the pandemic. So he does not have any reference to what, you know, Lydia did and you know, Spencer did in his junior year, and going all back to all of the previous school board representatives. So he came up with this concept, and I thought it was just brilliant that not only helps Lila, but it helps perpetually down the road, and each person will take ownership of that Google Drive folder, and it'll just build and build and build, and we'll have some historical pieces on there. I mean, we talked about just reconfirming the role of a student school board member. It's not to just be in governance here, but to work through the system in management, because students will come to these representatives with, hey, and there potentially could be some actionable things that they could change in their school. and then report back to you guys at the governance level of here's what we've done in working with management of the building and from a student's perspective. And I think that there's a want to do that, but that it was more of John saying, I got to clarify because I haven't been in regular times how to be a student school board representative. It's just one more things that we're just going to have to, the residuals of this whole journey that we've been on that hopefully is getting to be further and further in our rearview mirror. But I thought it was a great idea. I thought that, boy, why didn't we think about this about 8 years ago? But I think this caused this type of thinking because John didn't have much of a reference of what a regular year would look like, in different learning levels and different safety mitigations and things like that. When can you get to other schools to talk and to other students? And I mean, his first year was basically virtual. I mean, it's just, again, I thought this was a really good idea, and it's going to benefit Lila coming into her second year of her term.
Awesome.
And they're talking about forms for surveys, all sorts of things that John's going to start to put together. And I would even encourage to have a journal or a experience from each student school board representative so they can go back historically to fast forward to 2032. They could look back and say, John Lallum was the George Washington of this Google Drive, and he started this great document. So.
Well, I think about, my goodness, it's been many years since we started this, and we were kind of making it up as we were going along in the first couple of years, and I think we've evolved it. But, we have the opportunity when we're in the MSBA Leadership Conference to hear the panel where it is the student school board reps kind of talking about things that they're doing, but obviously they don't have the opportunity to hear that. And one thing that might be something we would consider raising up to MSBA is what kind of resources or forums are they affording all of the student school board reps the opportunity to collaborate with each other and just best practice share, or kind of see what's going on in Hopkins or see what's going on in some of these outstate schools that have student school board reps. And that might be an interesting nugget to try to kind of think about a little bit.
And that's a great point, because I think the number of districts in the state with student school board reps are growing every year.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a great idea. I think we started 8 or 9 years ago. Lisa, you had brought back, I think, the idea from
Well, no, this was Mr.
was
Harlan.
me.
This is Harlan and way back in the day.
Mr.
that's
Nelson and
right.
Mr.
But so that was from him. But every year we try to tune it up a little bit, right? In
Right.
terms of, but
Alex.
yeah, no, I think, and every year we have, I think.
Delano also has a student council, right?
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
So, I feel like that could be incorporated in somehow where we could get some kind of report, what goes on at the student council, maybe some big events or major topics that they're discussing. Be
Yeah.
nice to hear.
Yeah, I think Abby Hutchins and Alex were our first two.
Alex Grant, yeah.
So that was like 2010 maybe, or no, I don't.
I started in 12, and I think we got it to fruition after my first year.
Yeah, long time.
I just feel like kind of COVID just kind of put a kibosh on the ball that was starting to get rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Like many
we're
things.
just trying to get that ball rolling again and keep it rolling no matter what happens.
Sounds great.
I like the idea of the connector though into the city, into student council.
Yeah.
And national honors. I think
Sure.
you all are bodies that have some of that, I don't know, that same essence and spirit.
Okay.
Well, and DIS has a student council, so there's access for connectivity across
Yeah.
buildings.
Yes. Very good. Awesome. Anything else? All right, and then we only have one other topic, and it was just something that we talked about in the retreat, but also thought we wanted to, the best way to kind of tackle public comment was to just do a look back of what was the last month's public comment themes, and if that was something that as a board we needed to dialogue about or discuss or ask questions about, Matt, because we are so limited to the confines of what we've gauged around public comment. And so again, this was just a placeholder to say, is there anything a theme coming out of last month's public comment that we wanted to address? So we talked about January, there was one esteemed public comment, but had very specific themes that are now really not, I don't want to say relevant, but it's not as emergent as it would have been in that moment of time. So were there any other elements of that public comment that we felt like we needed to talk through this evening as a group?
I don't think so. I seem to remember, no, maybe that was, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, we're in low transmission, so we're not really in that element of having to make any of those decisions at this time. And then,
Did you get something from Ms. Grossish regarding a statement that was made about, I can't remember the details, I'm sorry.
oh, the data
Yeah. I don't
that you
even remember,
shared
we
with
gotta write
us,
this stuff down.
that you shared with us in your Thursday email, an update from her?
I don't know if I shared an update. We were originally going to have Ms. Grosses,
Oh,
who's the
that's
public
what it
health, Wright County Public Health Director, to come talk about data and the data that they use to drive their guidelines, the data that's driven by CDC and MDH. I let Sarah know that, you know, a lot can happen in 1 month, and it's becoming not even, hopefully not an issue moving forward, and continue to move, getting back to normalcy. I'll mention it in my comments in my administrative report, but we sent out a notification to all parents and students and staff that the mask requirement on school buses has ended, and we made that effective immediately. And that's just another sign with the CDC updating their guidelines that we hopefully think that this is going to move into an endemic instead of a pandemic, and that we continue to move in that direction. So, and I think that it was the appetite of the board to get back to conversing about academics and education and assessment and achievement rather than masks. I'm tired of it. You guys are tired of it. We're all tired of it, and we need to move on and get back to what makes the district a fundamentally great district to be in.
Can I ask a clarifying question about that? When I read that, both the statement that the MSBA, but also I think, I can't remember where else I read, it said, I interpreted it to say, if you were in a county with low transmission, you no longer have to mask on a bus. But I thought that was a federal mandate. So can you clarify that for me a little bit?
So the CDC released updated guidelines, and part of that then is the mandate is stopped.
Okay.
So then it's up to the individual school districts. Their guidelines are that if you're located within a county, and we happen to be located in 2 counties, Wright and Hennepin, if you're in low to moderate transmission, which is the same rubric that we use in a decision-making matrix, to my understanding on the percentages, is that they would recommend the masking guidelines. It's the same concept that we use in the decision-making matrix, but it's purely now up to us as a school district. There is no requirement. Federal standards have ceased as of the 25th because the CDC updated their guidelines. So it, conceivably, Wright County is in low transmission right now. Hennepin County is in moderate transmission. So we wouldn't. There was no questioning that we would just inform our parents that it's not required on a bus.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or any topics that we need to discuss in work session? All right, then I will entertain a motion to recess. Motion is by Corey. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sue. We are in recess. All right, we will go ahead and call the meeting back from recess. It is 7:01. The first item before we have our program review is we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. This is our favorite meeting of the year, and we are so happy that now we are able to have this great program back. We missed it for the last couple of years.
Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'm happy to be here to present our readers, our first grade readers. Do you want to put that up there, Mr. Shane?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to have them step in over here, and I'll go through this while they're in here since they were a big part of this month, and then we'll kind of walk them through.
Hi, guys.
Hi, welcome.
Welcome.
Do you want to scooch them down a little bit? We want everybody to be. We're not so scary. Welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Well, they are just about ready to get going. Our theme for this month was Read for the Gold. We celebrated the Olympics and then I Love to Read Month. So we had several different dress-up days, which these kids participated in. We had Red, White, and Blue Day. We had Book Character Day. Oh, Athlete Day. Let's see, am I forgetting? Oh, Pajama Day. Thanks, Jasper. Yes, that's the best one.
Sports Day.
Yes, yep, Sports Day. And then Mr. Ludwig and I had a battle of reading minutes. So we kind of split the school, and we had Team Ludwig versus Team Schultz. Currently, Team Ludwig was winning at the end of the day today. So not everybody has entered their minutes. So, you know, we'll wait for a final tally. Not that I'm competitive or anything. But anyway, and then we also had the Winter Games as part of this whole month, which was a ton of fun. And to kind of close it all down, we are going to have a family reading night next week. And we are also getting Mary Casanova as an author visit to come to the school. And that is a big thanks to the Delano Public Library and our Language Arts Committee and Ms. Verhey for getting that organized for us. So we are looking forward to those things. And now for the big moment here, our first graders in Ms. Jensen's class are going to be reading Tacky and the Winter Games. I'm going to have the kids, I'm going to come around, kids, and please say your name into the microphone, okay?
Jasper, Mackenzie, Grant, Camden, Addie, William, Haley, Rylan, Elsie, Maddie, Greta, Adeline, Easton, Aria, Colin, Emma.
Thank you, kids. They are ready.
So we are going to read Tacky and the Winter Games by Helen Lesser, and it's Tacky the Penguin has a lot of different stories, so this is one of the stories based on Tacky the Penguin. And it was the Olympic Games, so we went with that, right? Right. Are you ready? Say the title again.
Tacky and the Winter Games by Helen Lester. Our story
Please, the athletes march into the stadium far and wide. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tacky marched to his own beat. 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 2, 0. Lighting the torch and exchanging high flickers as a sign of friendship. The athletes walked past the display of medals, thinking about winning them. The sun rose and the Penguins prepared for their first event, the bobsledless race. Tacky was way off, looking at the hill before he arrived. They were belly sledding. With that, he crashed under his companions and set them down the hill, finishing in record time. This was a bobsledless race. You have a bobsled. He isn't a bobsled. He is a penguin. I don't look like much of a bobsled either. Well, whatever it is, I declare it illegally open for no one of the 14 nice icy land yet. In the afternoon, the athletes strapped frozen fish to their feet for the ski jumping event. One after another, the athletes made graceful jumps and lovely landings, except for Tacky. Tacky's fish had become unthawed and now were flopping and rotting. He made a higher jump than he had intended and had lots of landings. No medal for Team Nice Icy Land yet. Team Nice Icy Land was very unhappy. Later that same evening, the speed skating relay race was the final event. This is our last chance to win, Tacky. All of the things look very aerodynamic in their costumes, except for Tacky. Tacky looked well tacky. They are off. Lovely passed the baton to Lovely. Lovely passed it to Angel. Angel passed it to Neatly. Neatly passed it to Perfect. Perfect passed it to Tacky, and he ate it. Yummy. He ate it. Ate it. Yes, he ate it. Well, it did look like a hot dog. Ate the baton. Tacky, you ate the baton. Crossing the tongue and began to chase Tacky around the skating rink. Tag! Tacky loved a good game of tag. He skated faster and faster and barreled across the finish line in record time. As the Team Nice Icy Land really was.
Excellent reading.
Well
Thank you.
done.
Thank you. Great
Very
job.
good.
Well done,
Kids, why don't you turn around and wave out at the audience? Thank you all for coming. What great expression. You guys have become such good readers. So proud of all of you. Thank you, Miss Jensen, for working with the kids and getting them all ready for this today.
This is a highlight of I Love to Read Month.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys.
It's our favorite
Bye-bye.
meeting.
Thank you.
Nice job. Well done. Great reading. Keep reading. Yes.
That was fun.
We don't certainly expect you to stay. You can, but you are welcome to stay. Give it just another minute.
Dairy Queen's about to be packed.
Yeah.
I heard lots of ice cream requests.
Lila was a
Take
reader?
long.
Oh, sorry. Did you? You weren't here? I remember one of the Seguin children reading.
I think Nora was.
Nora,
Yeah, if I remember
At least
correctly.
one of the depots.
Oh, yeah.
There's been, I think, Anna Marie and Megan.
All right. I think we are just about, yep, a little bit more quiet. We can go ahead. We'll proceed with the agenda. Next up is the consent agenda. So obviously, we've got school board minutes, all the financial affairs, transactions. So anybody who's ever interested in taking a peek at the bills and kind of where the money is going, certainly all those documents are there and attached every month for you to peruse at your reading leisure. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented this evening.
Jenny will make that motion.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
Jim will second.
Jim will second. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We have an approved consent agenda. Next up, we have our resolution for acceptance of gifts. Looks like we have several donations, which is always wonderful. We have the Charities Aid Foundation donated $207.50 for Delano Elementary. General Mills designated $250 for Delano Elementary. Target donated $44 for Delano Elementary. The Delano Elementary School Pie Organization donated $181.90 for Delano Elementary. Delano Intermediate School Pie donated $450 and $200 for use of the Delano Elementary or Intermediate School, excuse me. Light of Christ donated $500 for community care for students. High School Pie donated $469.92 for Delano High School. Dorn Family donated $1,100 for the Activities Scholarship. DTABC donated $132 for booster reimbursement of the state dinner. Drama Boosters donated $179.03 for Our Town Facebook ads. The Dance Booster Club, $7,313.37 reimbursement for expenses and coaches clinic. And the following was designated for the Orange Cross Robotics team. $1,000 from Delano JC's, $1,000 from Industrial Louvers, $500 from Adam Simons, and $500 from H&F Manufacturing. So all of these have generously been offered to the Delano Public School systems with the conditions placed on them as noted above. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second?
I could second.
Seconded by Sue. We will now move into a roll call vote.
Ms. Roser?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Ms. Rosno?
Aye.
Ms. Segwin?
Aye.
Mr. Gierke?
Aye.
All right, thank you again for that. All wonderful. Some of those programs just rely so heavily on that. It's always nice to see those donations every month. We'll move into item 8, which is personnel matters. So personnel matters have been attached. Has everybody had a chance to review the personnel matters? The one note is we do have, tonight we are approving the 2021-2023 Delano Teachers Association contract. So that's a key contract note in there. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the personnel matters as presented this evening.
Jenny will make that motion.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
Jim, second.
Seconded by Jim. Again, any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Personnel matters are approved. Next up, we have public comment. So school patrons are given the opportunity to address the school board regarding items that are not on the agenda. We do ask that patrons state their name and address for the record. While the board appreciates feedback from the public in this forum, board members will not comment on or discuss topics brought up by speakers at this time. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the board this evening during public comment? Welcome, Kevin.
Kevin Kangas, 235 2nd Street, Southwest. We kind of hit a milestone today, feels like. Just got an email that masks are removed on buses now as well. So it's kind of a big day, perhaps, and into getting back to normal. So I want to thank the board and the staff or whoever has been able to work and make any of these changes possible for eliminating masks in the school, mandatory masks in the school, mandatory masks on the buses, the training for all the teachers and staff on political speech laws, and anything else that you guys have done to address a lot of the comments that we've heard in the past year. It's kind of tailed off now, and I think maybe that's indicative that people think things are moving in the right direction, so that's a good thing. So I just want to commend you guys for that, and I think if things keep moving in this direction and that hockey rink gets up, maybe that referendum will pass. So.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there anyone else here that wishes to address the board this evening? One more call. Anyone here just wishes to address the board? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and move forward. Thank you for your comment tonight. We'll move into administrative reports, and we're going to start with our superintendent. Oh, he's mobile. He's moving.
I believe I do this once a year on February of every school year, but I am going to combine this with my report that I would like to share several things with you this evening. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present some information and share some information with you this evening. A couple of things that I've updated you on either during work session or in my weekly email, but we're delayed by about a week or two with our post-election analysis. So that's kind of the kickstart for this body to take a look at that information. And basically what the post-election analysis does in brief review is it provides us with a blueprint or a snapshot of the demographic profile of our referendum. You know, who voted, who didn't vote, turnout by target group, etc., age, sex, all of those types of things. We'll be able to take a look at that analysis, and that will begin the serious planning and preparation for the fall levy referendum in FY22 or in November of 22. And it does provide us with an understanding from a demographic point of view of what needs to change or improve to get better outcomes that we did. So we always want to make sure that we learn from our community through a post-election analysis. And then it'll also kickstart some additional feedback sessions that we want to reach out to our community about that to be serious, because it is an extremely important question, or two, depending on how you want to organize your ballot. But that's going to be started in earnest here in the next week or two. They got delayed on getting the voter file from the county and from both, and all the precincts from both Hennepin and Wright County. So once Baker Tilly gets that information, they'll have about a week to turn it around and get that information to us. So that'll start in earnest the planning there. As I stated before in the work session, we received communication from several agencies that the requirement of masks on school buses has ended, and we notified all of our constituents and all our parents that it has ended here in Delano as well, effective immediately. I want to go through just briefly, from time to time I do this, just to go through briefly where we're at with our strategic plan and what levels. As you well know, we have four main pillars of our strategic plan. They are curriculum, professional development, facilities, and technology. Just to briefly update you on where we are at. In curriculum, we had two major annual goals. The first one was to refine MTSS, which is multiple tier support systems, and put a team together to establish shared understanding and common vocabulary, specifically looking at data collecting, monitoring, Tier 1 interventions. These are Tier 1 interventions, and I know it's a lot of education speak, but it's the first intervention that a classroom teacher should be able to make if they're starting to see some struggling students happen. Right away in the classroom, to be done at each building level at their student success team, and even before that. There are several action steps that they were to take, but the key piece is to catch struggling learners if they're beginning to struggle or any inkling of struggling sooner rather than later, and to avoid being referred to a 504 plan or a special ed plan if necessary. So there's some serious work that's being done at the district level. I won't go into a lot of detail. I know Rachel's going to give some information. She's a co-chair of the district MTSS committee that's going to go into a cohort here relatively soon and do it about a 5-month, but I don't want to steal any more information. I'll let that go right there. The second major goal was to implement the 2019 science and the 2018 art standards. Now, we're delayed a few years because of the pandemic. We haven't been able to get those in place, but both art and science standards are being worked on right now for implementation purposes. In professional development, which coincidentally always goes hand in hand with curriculum in a lot of areas, there was one major goal that we're working on that actually is the fundamental foundation of what we do to make sure that our teachers, our educators have more tools in their tool belt. And it's to support the training and the implementation of effective professional learning communities, otherwise called PLCs, to provide support of disciplinary literacy through year-long professional development activities. And those are covered over district staff or professional development days. They are covered under our 2-hour late starts on the third Wednesday of the month. And it's all intended to move, even with our multiple tier support systems, into this idea of teachers meeting in a professional learning community, looking at their student data, looking at best practices of strategies, answering those fundamental questions of, did they get the standard? How do we know they got the standard? What do we do if they get the standard? What do we do if they don't get the standard? And have that professional conversation as teachers moving forward. That has been the foundation of our drive in all of our professional development in partnership with our QCOP program, because that's what the peer collaborative groups are organized around. So we had several action steps that started with training in August, with lead peer coach training in August 24th. We had a district day in August before the school year started, and we've had several implementations of these strategies, some from outside organizations, some from our experts within the district that are commonly aligned to this literacy initiative that we continue to work on. We're working very hard on looking at our data to make sure that we keep our students moving along. There has been a little bit of a gap, obviously because of the pandemic, but we are closing that gap as we speak and moving through the school year. In the area of technology, we had one major goal. The first major goal of technology was going to be in year 3 or 4 of the strategic plan, which would have been this year and next year, was to move to a one-to-one initiative. Well, we've been a one-to-one initiative since 2020, just for the sheer fact of what we had to go through with the pandemic. So the annual goal is to maintain that platform for all K-12 students and refine age-appropriate digital learning practices. And basically what we did is we had two major things. One, we wanted to make sure we had a sustainable inventory of devices and life cycling them out. And we've got a plan over the next 5 years where we're going to need to adjust it, because once when we use some of our COVID dollars, our ESSER dollars, our GEAR dollars, we purchased a large amount of Chromebooks. Well, that means a large amount of Chromebooks are all going to life cycle out at the same time. So we've got an incremental plan in place to potentially sell some of those Chromebooks sooner rather than later in preparation for the big turnover. So we've got some things in place there, but also just to maintain digital citizenship. How much screen time? What should be utilized in the school? What should be utilized to take home if there needs to be something taken home and worked on digitally during the school year? And the last part was facilities. We had 3 major goals: is to complete our Raptor kiosks, which we have done at every school site and every entrance into our buildings, provide a safe, clean, disinfected learning environment for all our students and staff, and to manage traffic on campus at Community Ed. Our hope is, excuse me, I'm getting all choked up giving this report, is that we get more parents to make a decision that it's okay to get your kids back on the school bus. I have gotten reports from our school bus company that we obviously have to be prepared to transport our kids, but there's still a lot of people coming on campus where they could put their kid on the school bus. So hopefully with this last step here in place that we would convince our students, or convince our parents to have their students ride the bus, because as if you've been on campus at 7:45 or at 2:45 to about 3:10, 3:05, it is the best traffic jam in Delano. So it does, but it is what it is when you're located on one campus. And that completes my administrative report for you this evening. Last week was School Board Member Appreciation Week. Not sure if you're aware of that or if you got that information. And every year I present you with a certificate and with a heartfelt thanks. But I think that this year, above probably any other year, the last 2 school years has been an extremely challenging time for school board members. Not only in this district, in this county, this state, this country. It has taken you to be courageous in making decisions and supporting the administration, giving governance to the administration, giving leadership advice to me in my role as superintendent. It just feels that much more important to recognize all of you in the work that you've done over the last 20 months, specifically in the face of adversity and difficulty and crisis that, quite frankly, at times where difficult decisions had to be made, with the understanding that you had the students' best interests at mind at all times. And from my perspective and on behalf of the entire staff of Delano Public Schools, I thank you tenfold this year above any other year or the last 20 months because of the work that you've had to do and the difficulty that you had to navigate through. It's not easy, it's not popular, it's decisive at times, it's divisive at times, and I just appreciate that you stood forward and were courageous and brought your leadership to the board, and from a board's perspective, you've navigated us through this. And hopefully this is the end game with regards to the difficulties that we've been going through in this pandemic, and we can get back to talking about what I just shared with you, a little bit more on the education and academic and achievement sides of things. So with that said, congratulations. Let's give them all a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, man. Appreciate the gesture. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're last.
I did the side move there.
I'm the oldest. Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you, Amy,
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Yep. That's very sweet. All right, thank you, Matt. We will move on to our principals' reports, starting with Ms. Thompson.
Good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight on behalf of the intermediate school. So this evening, the topic for the intermediate school is going to be just giving a little bit of a snapshot into where we're at as a staff and what we're focusing on instructionally at this point in the year. We've had a really busy whirlwind start to our year for lots of reasons, and we are heading into a time where, as we look at the weeks, they look rather long and grueling. It's a time of year where we have an opportunity to really focus in on our academics as we head into testing season, which is coming up before we know it. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit some numbers in terms of where our students were assessed when we did our FAST assessment, which is just a screener we use to give us an indicator of proficiency level in our students. Our numbers are a few weeks old, but then also talking about what we've been working on in professional development with our staff to kind of continue moving those scores forward. So I just want to start really quickly when our students took the FAST test in December. For math, so this is students who scored either low risk or college pathway on those benchmarks, so basically the percentage of students that are where they need to be to meet grade level standards. So for math, our 4th grade scored 76%, our 5th grade was at 85%, and our 6th grade was at 88%, so that would be meeting the benchmarks in math. And then in reading, our 4th grade was at 80%, our 5th grade was at 82%, and our 6th grade was at 93%. And so those numbers are really impressive, I think, considering everything that kids have been through and teachers have been working through. So I especially look at our 6th grade being 93% on track in December is outstanding. And so one of the things that some reflecting on what I want to share with you that I think has led to these really pretty impressive scores at this point is that our staff is really committed to focusing on rigor when they're teaching the standards to our students. And so there have been a couple opportunities that we've had as a team to really continue to focus on that work. And the first one was we did a half day with our site-based team a few weeks ago in February, and one of the things that we focused our learning on, I like to try to use any time with my site-based if I have extended time to do learning work, so we did some learning around standards-based grading. It's just been an area of some confusion and disagreement for our staff, and so we just took that time to do some reading and some learning and conversation, and what came out of that was some really detailed proficiency level descriptors that our staff can now apply to when they're having conversations about their instruction and their assessments, really having those good collaborative conversations about when we're teaching this, are we teaching it to the level of rigor that we would expect for students to be proficient. So that was a really beneficial conversation. And then full staff on President's Day, the 21st, spent 3 hours with a solution tree consultant, and they also focused on just their learning targets and rigor and what does it really mean to make sure that we are teaching things in a learning progression that really gets our kids to where they need to be when it comes to proficiency. And then, just from a day-to-day perspective, I get the chance to be in classrooms and actually see this at work, and there's just some really great teaching and learning happening at the intermediate school right now. So I feel really good about what we're doing and where we're focusing, and that's just something that, Matt talked about, really improving our PLCs. This is work that's ongoing. It's work that our PLCs constantly need time to discuss and collaborate and say, okay, where are you at with this? Are we doing what we need to do with this? And so improving that structure and giving more time to our teams is going to be one of those focuses then that we have moving forward. So we hope to continue to see that improvement. So that's kind of what I wanted to focus on in terms of just where we're at with instruction right now, really doing a nice job with the intermediate school. So that's exciting. And then I just wanted to highlight real quick at the end, we did something called Give Back Week at the intermediate school, which is new for us. One of the things we're trying this year is to try to implement some new community traditions at the intermediate school since we're kind of new. And I just want to recognize Andy Brown and Rebecca Olmscheid and Katie Kulvener, who are teachers who kind of took this on their own spare time. And it was really, really successful. They raised money with our students for the Ronald McDonald House Charities and also the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Kind of replaced our pennies for patients that we've done in the past. Our students raised over $2,000. They collected over 22,000 grams of pop tabs for the Ronald McDonald House, and they collected over 1,500 food items this last week. And so just want to acknowledge the work that those teachers did and that our kids did. And also I should recognize Mr. Potter because he earned us a whole bunch of money by offering to be duct taped to the cafeteria wall 3 times. So lots of really great participation from our students and staff and parents. So thank you. Any comments or questions?
That was a lot.
We're busy.
That was
I know
like
it's
a
a
lot.
Great,
We're
that was
busy.
a great update, thank you.
Yeah,
you.
incredible update. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, next up, high school. We have Mr. Voigt. Welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. It's a pleasure to represent the high school this evening. I wanted to start this evening by just kind of running through a series of recognitions for some of the successes that our students have achieved recently. They're encompassing all of athletics and arts and academics. So first, I'll say that Kale Olson is going to represent Delano at the state wrestling tournament here coming up. Our boys hockey team is playing in section finals on Wednesday. They're taking on Minneapolis to earn a trip to state. We've recently had History Day, which of course I think the board is fairly familiar with, and it's been a successful event for Delano students over the course of the years. This year we have, at least in the 8th grade, 18 students who are moving on to regionals in various combinations or groupings. Our boys swim team had a very successful weekend, and there's a whole slew of swimmers and various events to name them all specifically, but they're headed to state here and going to serve or represent us well. Avery Lommel and Gabby Stout were recently at state for gymnastics, and our dance kick team also represented Delano well at state tournament. This coming weekend, Science Olympiad is going to represent Delano High School at state competition, and Carson Trujillo is also representing Delano at the All-State Orchestra. So lots of good successes and achievements that we wanted to make sure to recognize. So moving on to sort of the meat of the update this evening, I just wanted to give a heads up that our schedule redesign committee has moved forward with a proposal to convert our schedule in the beginning of the 23-24 school year with a 6-period day on trimesters. I believe the plan is for me to speak with the board during a work session next month to provide a little bit more context and background to that, that process. Of course, leading up to that next school board meeting, I'll be meeting with the staff, of course, and then following the school board meeting, certainly providing opportunities for parents to listen in on all of the different changes that are coming down the pike. So now that I've accidentally clicked my screen and have to circle back, I do want to make a note that I had the fortune to meet with a collection of business members here in town with respect to our schedule redesign. Our business community is not particularly interested in whether or not we're on a 5-period day or a 6-period day or whatever. However, they are interested in what our larger goals are as a school. And as a result of some of the pandemic restrictions and things like that, our partnership with the business community has been sort of stressed and limited. So I met last week with about 15 or 16 members, and it was just a really exciting meeting. In fact, it was expected to be about an hour long, and I think it ended up being 2.5 hours long because they had just so many ideas to share, and they were very enthusiastic. And perhaps the most exciting thing was it's not like they were just coming to the table and saying, you guys need to get kids to do all of these things. There really was a genuine partnership there. And so we'll be looking at, obviously, how we can continue that partnership in the coming years, and looking at developing some different strategies and events and things like that. And the real kind of genesis for that meeting, or that rebirth of our mutually beneficial relationship, was the fact that through listening sessions we heard from many students and parents that our kids need real world experiences, right? They need tangible examples of what they're going to be doing in their future lives. So I'm really excited about that. Just to check in very briefly on our strategic plan, one of the strategies that the high school site-based leadership team has embarked upon this year is the creation of a school climate survey. So historically, we've used different school surveys, whether it's the Minnesota State Survey or there's a Michigan survey, and those are all fine and good, except the data is also housed elsewhere, right? And we are somewhat limited in how we can disaggregate it and what meaning we can make from that data. So our site-based leadership team endeavored to create our own school climate survey that we can sort of modify and adapt over the course of the years to address certain needs that we might have. So actually, I've got an administrative intern who's doing a bulk of the work, but the site-based team is going to be kind of looking over the questions, and those questions are really going to be kind of centered on the following topics. The Tiger Way, of course, which is teamwork and inclusion, grit and excellence, respect. But also just kind of stress management and workload of our students, student behaviors, as well as motivation amongst our students and how students are motivated, how well they're feeling motivated, and what we can do to maybe improve that. So we are going to be putting that together here as the spring unfolds, and we're going to be collecting baseline data this May. So obviously this can be sort of a continuous process that we can obviously develop intentional strategies to improve school climate over the course of the years. And the last thing, actually two more things, sorry. I think Ms. Thompson mentioned that testing season is right around the corner. In fact, ACT testing will be offered next week. And then of course in April and May is MCAs. And we're also beginning preparations for summer school. And we're going to do a summer school program that's very similar to what we've done in, at least last year, focusing mostly on credit recovery in the 9th through 12th grades, but also hoping to offer skill development in the areas of math and reading for primarily our 7th and 8th grade students as well. But we'll kind of see how that unfolds. I know we're in conversation with Ms. Reeder, kind of going through all the different rules and the finances and resources available and things like that. So that is the conclusion of my prepared report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the high school.
No questions, but thanks for recognizing those kids for those stellar activities. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Appreciate it. And finally, rounding out our principal reports, we have Ms. Schultz representing the elementary school.
Hello again.
Hello.
Thank you for having me here and giving me your time to present on behalf of the elementary school. I feel like I was a little doom and gloom in January because we were coming out of that rough COVID staffing and it was not so great. But February has been really busy, but also lots of things coming our way. Two specific things that I want to touch on. We have started the LETTERS training among our staff, which stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. And MDE has offered this at no cost to our staff. However, and it is voluntary that they have this opportunity for this professional development. And it's over 150 hours that they will be completing on their own to implement these strategies that they're learning about. And they're also going to be doing that with live teaching, recording themselves, and kind of collaborating. So we have over 20 teachers within the elementary school that have decided to take this opportunity. And I know because of the nature of the collaborative group within the elementary, it's going to spill out into those PLCs where the rest of us within the building are going to be able to reap those benefits because they're all about sharing and collaboration and trying out those strategies for those early literacy skills that are so crucial at that young age. So we're excited for that to start. A few of them, like when you pop into different meetings, they're just buzzing about what they're learning. And a lot of it is focused on that science of reading and structured literacy, which isn't brand new, but it is kind of a new take on kind of what has been balanced literacy. And we're kind of bridging those two things with the curriculum that we have, in addition to learning about these new strategies. So we're excited to get going on that. And Mr. Shane had mentioned the Mtss Initiative that Ms. Kunkel and I are co-chairing. And that has been really exciting, but also sort of like this overwhelming, like, whoa, we've got some work to do, but I feel like we have such a great district team. We have representatives pre-K through 12 within, so that's our teachers, interventionists, administrative, and social workers. So we're focusing on those academic skills, but also the social emotional aspect too. And that, again, MDE has kind of created programs and cohorts. So we had to put in a request to be a part of a cohort. So we did that legwork. We attended some webinars to get some of that background information. And then we were accepted into the 5-month cohort. So we are with St. Michael, Albertville, Rockford, Owatonna, and a few other surrounding districts. So we all meet. Our third session will be this Wednesday. So it's 2 hours within the school day, and we collaborate. They kind of lead us and coach us into really evaluating what our current practices are for those strategies and implementation efforts of those components of MTSS, and kind of seeing what we have and what we really need to refine and get better at. And with that becomes a need for some resources. So Ms. Kunkel and I know Ms. Reeder has also helped us write a grant to hopefully get some funding to help us support any ongoing training that we'll have with that. So those are two pretty big things that we've got started, and we're looking forward to where we can go. We're excited to kind of be out of the COVID talk and the mask talk like we had mentioned, and really kind of get going and digging in to see where our kids are at and what they need, and these supports are really going to help them. In addition, we have done a mid-year review of our school improvement plan within our site-based team, and we meet this Wednesday to kind of go over those comments and kind of like a checkpoint of where are we at with those goals, how are we progressing, what do we need to kind of pick up the pace on, and what goals have we already met. And we also have our parent volunteers back in our building, and Ms. Wendy Scanlon did a great job getting that started for us within the district, and she is just getting those background checks and all those questionnaires noted and completed, so it's great to have parents back into the building again. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's great. Thanks. Move into business manager report.
Yep, just one quick little thing. We are up for lawn mowing again this for the 2022 and 2023 lawn mowing seasons. So we did advertise for that last week, and it's going to be in the paper again this week. And if anybody's interested in getting some of the specs and the quote page, they can contact me at the district office, 763-972-3365, extension 1951. And sealed quotes must be submitted to the district office by 10 a.m. on March 11th. Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mary. And our final administrative report is from our community education director. Good evening, Eric.
Thanks for having me here. Mainly, I wanted to cover up, talk about some recent registrations. Typically, we do our big registrations 3 times a year. But what falls in between there is we have opened up registration for summer for TKC, as well as for next fall for preschool. So we opened up about 2 weeks ago. Currently, our numbers for this coming fall for preschool, we have 94 people pre-registered. 47 asking for before care, and 61 asking for aftercare. So we'll have 3-hour blocks of preschool. We also provide childcare before that, and we provide childcare after that, which is typically referred to as wraparound care. Now, this is a number that will continue to grow. We are currently serving about 135 kids in our preschool program now. But 94 at this point that's a good number. So that number will continue to grow. We also, about 2 weeks ago, opened up TKC for summer. And within about 10 days, we then closed TKC for summer as we received 166 registrations for current kindergarten through 6th grade, and we received 80 registrations for current preschoolers. So we're sitting at around 250 students that we accepted within about a 12-day period. So we are forming a wait list, figuring out how we can staff it, how we can manage that within our buildings, knowing that there'll probably have to be a multi-building approach to be able to provide care for that many children. They're all really good problems to have, but it's a large number of kids, numbers that we haven't quite seen over the last couple of years. The other exciting piece that we have coming up is for our preschool students. They have parent-teacher conferences tomorrow and Wednesday. We are kind of in year 2 of implementation of what's called TS Goals, Teaching Strategies Goal, and that is it's a curriculum for our preschool that includes a data collection system that is new for what we're doing. That includes collecting data on 8 different components, or 6 areas with 23 objectives. So we're looking at literacy, mathematics, cognitive, language, social-emotional, and physical. So our preschool teachers are actively collecting data in those 6 key areas, and there's 23 objectives that they're looking for. This is relatively new. The rubric that TS Gold uses isn't even fully developed. So what we ask of our teachers is not only if we're looking for our students if they can demonstrate this, but they also need to have supporting data. So if we're looking at fine motor, They're gonna dictate that this student can do it, and then also list the supporting documentation on how they have demonstrated that. We are taking those measurements in the fall and as well as in the spring, so we can show parents progress throughout the school year. So that's an exciting piece that we are implementing this year, which is different in years past, and this will continue to be more refined. Typically, the development of this in preschool tends to lag a little bit behind, so as TS Gold develops the rubric, so we have more dictated measures on what we're actually looking for, this will further be refined, but our teachers are doing a really good job. They're being challenged to look for this in their students and adding that documentation in addition with their teacher's aid, that has been good. The next couple things we have coming up is we received a grant back in January that is going to allow us to implement a tutoring program. Those dollars will not start until the end of school year. And right now we're working with district staff to develop a tutoring program which will allow us to do either one-on-one or very small group tutoring. And we're going to try to do it in all disciplines. So those students that we've recognized that could use the help, we're going to offer to. We're also going to have it available to other students in our community who would just like that help. So we're in the process of building that. That is a program that will start once the school year is completed. And our goal is to use all of our current district staff in order to implement that program. And then the other piece is we continue to maximize the use of our building over at Community Ed. We've made some changes to our spaces. We have a number of students that maybe aren't necessarily receiving early child special ed services, but also need additional interventions. So we're looking at a way that we can service all of our students. We're dealing with some students that have real big emotions, so we've implemented a space in our building referred to as the common room that allows a teacher and assistant to bring that student in, to let that student have a slightly different environment, maybe calm some of those big emotions before returning to the classroom. That's been received really well. And then we're also looking at ways that we can provide greater interventions with those students moving forward. We meet on a monthly basis to talk about students that maybe aren't on an IEP, but teachers might have concerns or trying to figure out how we can provide services for that kid, even as simple as someone who needs more work with fine motor. So we're exploring ideas on how we can service these students in the future, where we can maybe have that student come out, get greater reps working on fine motor with some individual instruction. So we are game planning on how we can implement that into our instruction moving forward. So, any questions for me?
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
All right, we will move into our student board rep report.
Well, we had the pleasure of visiting both the elementary and intermediate today. I said during their workshop, albeit it was a little bit shorter, so we didn't visit with as many students. But yeah, as stated before by Ms. Schultz and Ms. Thompson, it was I Love to Read month. So it was kind of crazy going in and seeing how many minutes they got per week as a classroom, just over 1,000, which is crazy in 1 week. That's awesome. We got to keep it up. In the elementary building, they just got done with the Winter Olympics, which we had some pictures of seeing. Kids loved that, thought that was pretty awesome. Am I able to talk about the thing on Friday?
Now you
Okay,
have to.
I just wanted to make sure. There's going to be a reading carnival on Friday, which is pretty exciting, and I'm pretty sure kids are going to love, with a little bit of emphasis more on the carnival than the reading, which should be a lot of fun. Do you want to talk a little bit about the intermediate?
So they had their Give Back week, which was fun. I think they got lots and lots of donations we got to see, and that was really, really cool, doing some good work over there. Overall, kids also, I'm reading our notes here. They're doing like a tiger store that kids are really excited about. So overall, kids are just happy to be learning. They're kind of settling down a little bit into like MCA season and getting ready for kind of the end of the school year. So.
Kind of hunkering down now for the MCA week coming up in a few weeks, few months, April. few weeks. Yep. And yeah, and they really enjoyed seeing Mr. Potter taped to a wall. So.
Large emphasis on that.
Any questions?
What are your thoughts? Mr. Voigt shared the concept of the climate survey and being both in the high school. Kind of what are your thoughts about that? What do you think students, how do you think students are going to receive that? Do you feel like people are going to be able to really express themselves, or?
I think yes. I think something we need to make sure it's very widely available, because I think it's hard to pique interest about that kind of thing sometimes in high schoolers, because I think a lot of kids kind of see that and they're just like, oh, whatever. But I think overall it's a good idea. I think it'll be something that will be very useful.
I think I kind of forgot to mention about the high school, and where we saw. Sorry, I'm kind of roundhousing here. Inclusivity Week is this week, so that's a lot of the first graders, and now we're wearing orange. We got some stuff coming up. We got a speaker coming on Tuesday, tomorrow, tomorrow to talk about suicide awareness and prevention and stuff like that. So some pretty good stuff happening at our school right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
You're all good. That's your job.
All right, we'll move into board reports, starting with Masiko. I covered Masiko. We had our January meeting, which was our organizational meeting. All of the leadership positions remain the same. And for the most part, the bulk of the meeting was doing just the ancillary housekeeping, organizational stuff. But our new executive director, Melissa Handsome, as you're all aware, we hired her over the summer, and she shared a couple of different things. But I think one of the most exciting things that I wanted to really highlight and share with all of you is that Melissa has been nominated for the position of president-elect for the Minnesota Administrators of Special Education Organization. So just such a tremendous honor for her to be recognized as from her peers as being just an outstanding leader and educator in special education. So how thrilled are we that that's our executive director that's really managing our co-op and shepherding all of our students through special education needs. So that's incredibly exciting. So they will vote on that. If she's elected, her term will begin on July 1st, 2022. So we're excited for her. And then our business manager, Scott, shared that they'd been working on time and effort because they were anticipating that they were going to be selected for fiscal monitoring. Jokingly, they're like, we've got a new director and a new business manager. We're going to get picked. And sure enough, they did get picked. And so we talked a little bit about that in our meeting last week as well, but they're just going through and doing the diligence of, they pull files and there's a whole process associated with that, but fully confident that they'll, come out with flying colors. So everything else is linked for you to look at in your spare time. So any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Then I'll turn it over to Jim for Right Tech.
We also had our officer meeting, and since none of the reps changed, we left everything as it was, as far as officers and committees went. Then we also had a outside contractor report on the building and the grounds, everything from sidewalk to parking lot to the building, and they ranked needs of the building and everything, and cost analysis, and it comes down to a lot of repairs on an old building, so we're kind of ranking that by electrical and roof and sidewalks and what have you, and they're putting a plan together on how to attack these issues. So that's pretty much the next 6 to 8 months we'll be talking about making repairs on the building.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, professional development.
I attended the February 15th meeting. The team discussed what occurred on the PD days for February 16th and also the full day for the 21st. What you heard earlier from all of the principals was what the specific activities were on all of those days. In general, the group is looking at planning already for the next school year and what PD needs would be, from potentially a needs assessment of the staff, and then looking at goals and understanding what everyone from a professional development is looking at. So exciting stuff.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Any questions for Sue? That concludes all of our board and administrative reports, so we'll move into old business. The first item of old business is to approve the second read of policy 102, equal educational opportunity, due to substantive changes. Are there any comments or changes that were requested? Nope. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the second read of policy 102.
Jenny, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jenny.
I'll second.
Seconded by Corey. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that is approved. We have another policy where we need to approve the second reading of policy 104, which is school district mission statement. And that one was also needed due to substantive changes. Any discussion needed on this one? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve this policy.
I'll second.
Policy, motion by Lisa, second.
I'll second.
Second by Corey?
Yep.
Oh. It was like Jim did this whole ventriloquist thing there for a second. That was weird.
The mouth that opened.
All right, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay, opposed, nay. That is also approved. Then we have our last old item, old business, is to approve second reading of policy 623, which is mandatory summer school instruction, also due to substantive changes.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Corey.
I'll second.
And Jim will second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We'll move into new business. Our first item of new business is to take a look at the calendar for the 22-23 school year. Always an exciting opportunity.
We did, as you well know, you work session this last month. The calendar committee met once and came up with this version relatively quickly. Couple of changes to highlight is that spring break has moved back to take advantage of the Easter time period, and that gained us a day because some of the feedback is that this time of the year is a particularly long period of the year, and President's Day, where it's no school for kids, but it is a teacher work day, they wanted President's Day to be actually a long holiday weekend to kind of close the gap between winter break and spring break. And so we also moved up a workshop day, I believe, to the fall in November, based on feedback again that wanted to do a little bit more professional development on the front end of the year, to be able to implement strategies throughout the course of the year as well. So we will start after Labor Day, and we do end the Friday, June 2nd. 173 school days, 182 teacher contract days, and 4 quarters and 2 semesters, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah.
I didn't see that on there.
Right. Any discussion items revolving around the calendar? All right. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the 2022-23 school calendar as presented this evening.
Jenny, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Thank you all for the work done on this. I know it's a lot of lifting, so appreciate it. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We have an approved calendar. Woo-hoo. Next item is the 6th grade LLCC trip.
Yes, this was presented in detail by the principal of the intermediate school. There she is. So we're just, again, we follow the cycle. You ask clarifying questions. Mrs. Thompson gave kind of an overview of what the trip is going to be. It's good to bring it back. 6th grade team is taking this over, and we're asking for you to approve per policy the extended trip.
All right. I think there were a couple outstanding questions around previous students being able to also take part or anything like that. Is this pretty much as we left it?
Yep. We're going to keep it at that 6th grade.
Okay.
The only question I have is that I would assume that all of the removal of mask mandates will also go to that trip?
Yep.
Because I think that got sent out, that they'd have to wear masks on the bus, and yeah, the potential, okay, so those things need to change and probably go away?
I'm sure there's going to be updated information
Okay.
forthcoming.
Yep, perfect. So I just assumed it would flow through.
Very good. Any other discussion items? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 6th grade LLCC trip as reviewed.
I'll make the motion.
Motion is by Lisa,
Jim,
seconded by Jim. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is approved. Then we have approval on the agenda to talk through the Costa Rica trip.
Yep, Ashley Johnson gave detailed information at the last work session last month. Same thing, provided details. You guys asked some good clarifying questions. I think lots changed since last month again with regards to COVID protocols, especially in international travel. And I did provide you an update via my couple of Thursday emails ago as more information, and her extended policy trip, field trip policy, we're asking for the board to approve this trip as well.
Yeah, I really appreciated her lengthy explanation on all our questions. That was very helpful.
Agreed. She put a lot of work into putting that together.
Yeah, appreciate it. Just different level of comfort, you know, like. Any other discussion from the board on this one? Okay. Then at this time, I will approve the entertain a motion to approve the Costa Rica trip.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Corey.
I'll second.
Seconded by Jenny. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, change, or nay? That is approved. Sorry, brain is just about done. Next item is to approve the following policies due to non-substantive changes. So we have policy 201, which is legal status of the school board, policy 203, operation of the school board, governing rules, and policy 203.1, school board procedures, rules of order. All the policies that were reviewed and then discussed briefly in work session. Any other discussion needed on this one? This is a one read. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the policies due to non-substantive changes.
I can make the motion.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sue. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is also approved. And then item 4E, we have approval of first read of policy 202, school board officers due to substantive changes. And again, this is the policy Matt reviewed earlier. Any other discussion needed on that one? All right, at that point, I will entertain a motion to approve policy 202.
Jenny will make that motion.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Corey. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is also approved. And we have approved second read of policy 406, which is public and private personnel data due to substantive changes, and Matt extensively talked through that one again earlier in work session. Any other discussion needed for that? No? All right, then I will also entertain a motion to approve policy 202, or 406, sorry.
I'll make the motion.
He hasn't moved the screen.
Sorry.
You gotta
I'll
guess.
second it.
Motion is by Lisa, second by Jim. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is approved. And we don't have any additional business this evening, so we will adjourn at 8:12. Thank you, everyone.